Pirates of the Golden Age rewired naval warfare by turning their cannons into instruments of maximum destruction. Chains, nails, and shattered glass became ammunition, shredding sails, smashing rigging, and tearing crews apart in storms of flying metal. When a pirate ship appeared on the horizon, merchant crews braced for shredded limbs and shattered masts, knowing the attack would be as brutal as it was merciless. The most feared pirates didn't just steal ships, they transformed them into floating war machines, cramming extra cannons wherever they'd fit, and loading them with whatever jagged scrap they could find. This is how pirates really modified their cannons for maximum damage, and why the mere sight of a black flag could make grown men surrender without firing a shot. When pirates seized a merchant vessel, they inherited a weapons system designed by people who had never planned to terrorize anyone. Standard naval cannons were pathetic, smooth-bore tubes that couldn't hit anything beyond 500 feet with any reliability. Loading one took 10 agonizing minutes while your ship pitched and rolled, giving enemies plenty of time to escape or return fire. The ammunition was expensive, finite, and designed for formal naval battles between gentlemen who followed rules. Pirates didn't fight gentlemen. They hunted terrified merchants who just wanted to get home alive. The cannons they captured came with fundamental problems that would have crippled any conventional naval force. The barrels were smooth inside, meaning cannonballs bounced around as they traveled, destroying accuracy. Gunpowder strength varied wildly between batches, making range unpredictable. Wind, waves, and ship movement turned every shot into a gamble. A Royal Navy could afford to miss because they had endless ammunition and reinforcements. Pirates had neither. They needed every shot to count, but the weapons they stole were built for prolonged exchanges between heavily armed warships. Merchant vessels carried maybe a dozen cannons for defense against other merchants, not for the kind of close-range butchery pirates specialized in. The ammunition was solid iron balls, designed to punch holes in thick wooden hulls, useless when you wanted to capture a ship intact for profit. So pirates did what desperate people always do when conventional weapons fail them. They got creative. Pirates discovered that the cannons didn't care what you stuffed down their barrels as long as it fit. They began creating langrage, canvas bags filled with whatever sharp, twisted metal they could scavenge. Nails, broken glass, iron scraps, chain links, anything that could punch through human flesh got crammed into makeshift ammunition. The evidence uncovered on Queen Anne's Revenge demonstrates a methodical approach, not mere desperation. When researchers pulled cannons from the wreck, they found them still loaded with conglomerations of lead shot mixed with nails, glass fragments, and iron spikes. These weren't emergency measures. Blackbeard's crew had deliberately prepared their most brutal ammunition and kept it ready for the next encounter. When langrage fired, the canvas bag disintegrated inside the cannon barrel, sending a cloud of spinning metal fragments in all directions. The effect resembled a massive shotgun blast, but with jagged pieces of iron instead of round pellets. The wounds were horrific. Unlike clean punctures from musket balls, langrage created ragged tears that were nearly impossible to treat at sea. Ship surgeons couldn't extract dozens of glass shards and twisted nails from a wounded man without killing him in the process. Pirates didn't just use whatever metal they found lying around, they actively sought out the most damaging materials. Broken glass created wounds that wouldn't heal properly. Bent nails caught in muscle and bone. Chain links had enough weight to break limbs on impact. Some crews even melted down captured silverware, creating custom projectiles that would fragment on impact. The psychological effect was as important as the physical damage. Survivors of language attacks spread stories about the horrific wounds they'd witnessed. Merchant crews began surrendering at the first sight of pirate flags, knowing that resistance meant facing weapons designed not just to kill, but to mutilate. The violence carried intention, terror engineered to achieve a goal. Dead men tell no tales, but men missing arms and covered in scars become walking advertisements for pirate brutality. While language turned human beings into hamburger, pirates needed a different solution for disabling ships without sinking valuable prizes. They developed chain shot, 2 iron balls connected by chains up to 6 feet long. When fired, these projectiles spun through the air like medieval flails, designed specifically to wrap around masts, snap rigging, and turn wooden structures into splinters. The engineering was brutally elegant. 2 half cannonballs, carefully balanced, connected by heavy iron chain. When the cannon fired, the balls separated and began rotating around their shared center of gravity. The spinning motion gave them devastating cutting power against anything thin enough to wrap around: ropes, sails, human limbs. Chain shot's primary purpose was tactical vandalism. Pirates wanted to strand their targets, making escape impossible while keeping the ship's cargo hold intact. A successful chain shot could snap a main mast in half, leaving a merchant vessel dead in the water while pirates closed for boarding. The psychological impact was immediate. Crews watching their ship's mobility disappear knew they had minutes before pirates swarmed aboard. The archaeological record shows pirates manufactured chain shot specifically for their needs. Every chain link was calculated, trimmed to the exact length needed to tear through a merchant ship's rigging with devastating precision. Too short, and the balls wouldn't separate enough to be effective. Too long, and they'd tangle uselessly. Pirates experimented until they found the optimal length for their targets. But chain shot had an additional terror factor. When it hit human beings instead of rigging, the results were spectacularly gruesome. The spinning chains could wrap around a person's torso and continue rotating, essentially turning victims into human yo-yos. Survivors described watching men get cut in half by chain shot that caught them at deck level. Pirates made sure these stories spread. The more horrific the reputation, the fewer crews would risk fighting back. Blackbeard understood that psychological warfare required overwhelming firepower. When he captured La Concorde and renamed it Queen Anne's Revenge, he didn't just keep the original 16 cannons, he crammed in 24 more. The ship became a floating weapons platform, with cannons mounted wherever they'd fit, creating a bristling fortress of iron tubes pointed in every direction. This wasn't standard naval practice. Warships were carefully designed with specific cannon placements that balanced firepower with structural integrity. Pirates didn't care about engineering principles, they wanted maximum intimidation. If a spot could hold a cannon, they mounted one there. The result was ships that looked like mechanical porcupines, with gun barrels sprouting from every conceivable angle. The cannons came from captured vessels, creating a bizarre mix of different sizes, origins, and capabilities. Some were Swedish-made, others English. Sizes ranged from massive ship killers to small swivel guns that one man could operate. This diversity was actually an advantage. Pirates could match their ammunition to specific tactical needs during combat. Archaeological evidence shows the systematic nature of this approach. The cannons recovered from Queen Anne's Revenge came from multiple sources and manufacturing periods, proving that pirates collected weapons like trophies, adding each captured gun to their growing arsenal. Different foundry marks indicate cannons from Sweden, England, and other European manufacturers, all pressed into service aboard the same ship. The multiplication strategy created practical advantages beyond intimidation. More cannons meant shorter reload cycles. While one crew reloaded, others could maintain continuous fire. Pirates developed rotating fire patterns that kept enemy ships under constant bombardment, never giving them time to organize effective resistance. But the real weapon was the sight itself. Merchant sailors seeing a ship with 40 cannon barrels pointed at them often surrendered immediately. Why risk death when the outcome was obvious? Pirates had turned their ships into floating demonstrations of overwhelming force, making actual combat unnecessary in many encounters. The irony was perfect. By preparing for maximum violence, pirates often avoided violence entirely. Pirates solved their accuracy problems through tactical innovation that would have impressed military strategists. Since cannons were useless beyond 500 feet, pirates developed techniques to get close enough that missing became impossible. They turned their weapons' limitations into tactical advantages through careful planning and psychological manipulation. The false flag approach was elegant deception. Pirates flew friendly colors until they were within devastating range, then revealed their true identity and unleashed hell before enemies could react. By the time merchant crews realized they'd been fooled, chain shot was already spinning toward their masts and langrage was shredding their rigging. Pirates positioned their ships for maximum destruction, not maximum safety. While naval commanders tried to maintain safe distances, pirates closed to point-blank range, where their improvised ammunition became murderously effective. At 200 feet, langrage turned into an unstoppable cloud of flying razor blades. Chain shot could punch through multiple targets in sequence. The reload problem required tactical adaptation. 10 minutes was an eternity in naval combat, so pirates developed coordinated firing patterns. Different gun crews fired in sequence, maintaining continuous pressure while others reloaded. Swivel cannons provided rapid-fire capability during the vulnerable reload periods. These murderer guns could be turned in any direction and fired quickly to sweep enemy decks clean of defenders. Pirates also exploited their targets' psychology. Merchant crews stepped onto their ships to trade, not to fight. Men chasing profit, not glory. When pirates demonstrated their overwhelming firepower at close range, resistance usually collapsed immediately. The sight of langrage impacts and chain-shot destruction convinced most crews that surrender was their only option for survival. The tactical evolution was ruthlessly efficient. Pirates identified their weapons' weaknesses, then developed specific techniques to minimize those problems while maximizing terror impact. They turned inaccurate cannons into precision instruments of fear through careful positioning and calculated brutality. Close-range combat also allowed pirates to use their personality weapons effectively, the improvised ammunition that defined their reputation for creative violence. The most sophisticated pirate modification operated not on cannons, but on the human mind. Pirates discovered that their reputation for using horrific ammunition often made actual combat unnecessary. Word of langrage wounds and chain-shot mutilations spread faster than pirates themselves, creating a terror network that preceded them across the Caribbean. This feedback loop was deliberate strategy. Pirates encouraged survivors to spread stories about their brutal weapons and innovative torture techniques. The more horrific the stories, the more likely future targets would surrender without resistance. Every language victim who lived to tell the tale became an unwitting recruiter for pirate terror. The economic logic was perfect. Fighting cost money, time, and crew members. Scaring enemies into submission was free and risk-free. Pirates invested heavily in their reputations for creative violence, knowing that fear was more profitable than actual brutality. A merchant crew that surrendered immediately saved pirates the expense of ammunition and the risk of casualties. Blackbeard perfected this approach by cultivating a theatrical persona designed to amplify his ship's intimidating firepower. The wild beard, the burning fuses in his hat, the multiple pistols, all calculated to suggest barely controlled violence that could explode at any moment. When crews saw Queen Anne's Revenge approaching, with 40 cannons visible and Blackbeard's legendary figure on deck, resistance became psychologically impossible. The archaeological evidence supports this psychological warfare strategy. Pirates kept their most brutal ammunition loaded and ready, but many encounters ended in surrender before a shot was fired. The mere knowledge that those cannons contained langrage and chain shot was often sufficient to collapse enemy morale. This created a virtuous cycle from the pirates' perspective. Their reputation for innovative brutality reduced the need for actual violence, which preserved their ammunition and crew for encounters that required fighting. Meanwhile, the occasional demonstration of their weapons capabilities reinforced their terrifying reputation among survivors. Pirates had weaponized their own mythology, turning stories of their creative violence into actual tactical advantages that made future violence unnecessary. Modern archaeology has demolished the romanticized version of pirate warfare by revealing what they actually loaded into their cannons. The recovery of Queen Anne's Revenge provides forensic evidence of systematic brutality that goes far beyond Hollywood's sanitized pirate adventures. When archaeologists pulled cannons from Blackbeard's flagship, they found them still loaded with the ammunition pirates had prepared for their next victim. Conglomerations of lead shot mixed with iron nails, glass fragments, and metal spikes, exactly the language described in historical accounts. These weren't emergency improvisations, but carefully prepared weapons of terror. The evidence reveals the calculated nature of pirate ammunition choices. Iron sprues, waste material from metal casting, were bundled with cloth and loaded as anti-personnel weapons. The precise organization suggests crews had developed standard procedures for creating their most effective ammunition types. This was industrial-scale preparation for maritime terrorism. X-ray analysis of concreted cannon loads shows the sophisticated engineering behind chain shot. The chains were measured lengths designed for optimal effectiveness against ship rigging. Pirates had experimented with different configurations until they identified the most destructive combinations. The archaeological record preserves their research and development in deadly innovation. The sheer quantity of modified ammunition found in the wreck contradicts romantic notions of pirates as freedom-loving adventurers. They were organized, systematic, and obsessively focused on maximizing the terror impact of their weapons. Every cannon was loaded with ammunition designed not just to kill, but to create wounds so horrific that survivors would never forget the encounter. Archaeological findings from other pirate wrecks confirm that Blackbeard's approach wasn't unique. Pirates across the Caribbean developed similar ammunition modifications, sharing techniques for creating the most effective anti-personnel weapons. The archaeological record reveals a community of practitioners dedicated to perfecting maritime terrorism. These discoveries expose the gap between pirate legend and pirate reality. The archaeological evidence shows calculated cruelty, systematic preparation, and obsessive attention to maximizing psychological impact through physical mutilation. Pirates turned garbage into instruments of calculated horror, transforming their ships into engines of terror that made surrender more common than resistance. The cannons recovered from these wrecks preserve the truth about how pirates really modified their weapons for maximum damage, and why their reputation for creative brutality made them so effective at avoiding actual combat. The most devastating pirate weapon lay beyond iron and gunpowder. It lived in fear. A story could spread farther than a cannonball, and the memory of shredded sails and broken bodies traveled faster than any ship. Crews didn't just surrender to cannon fire, they surrendered to reputation, to the terror of what might happen if they resisted. Archaeological evidence from wrecks like Queen Anne's Revenge shows how deliberate this was. Pirates experimented like engineers of terror, turning scrap metal, chains, and broken glass into weapons designed to shatter bodies and minds alike. Every improvised cannon shot struck more than wood and flesh. It struck the mind, leaving survivors to spread tales of horror at the next port. That legacy endures. Beneath the waves, some cannons still lie loaded, their language sealed in iron for centuries, silent reminders of how pirates turned desperation into innovation and fear into their deadliest weapon. The next time you think of pirates as legends, Remember, their greatest victory was convincing the world that resistance was hopeless before the first shot was ever fired.